There's a difference between reading a book and entering into a dialogue with it. Most of us were taught to read passively, finish the chapter, understand the plot, maybe underline a few lines. But active bibliotherapy asks something else of you. It asks you to respond, not in a review, not in an academic essay, but in your journal. One page, one paragraph, but in conversation. When I read Kamala Das, for example, I don't simply arrive or admire her honesty. I feel provoked by it. Her unapologetic emotional exposure forces me to examine my own restraint. Instead of closing the book and saying that was powerful, I open my journal and write, what would I say if I were dishonest? Where do I still admit myself? Now I'm no longer consuming her work, I'm speaking back to it. That's active reading, and it changes you. In bibliotherapy, the goal is not admiration, it's engagement. If you read Rabindranath Tagore and feel the quiet expansiveness in his poetry, don't stop at appreciation. Right. Do I allow this kind of stillness in my own life? Or am I constantly rushing? If you read Arundhati Roy and feel the intensity of her political and emotional convictions, right, where do I silence my convictions to remain comfortable? Books become sharper when you answer them, and sometimes you won't agree. That's even better. You might read something by Lahiri about displacement and belonging and think that's not my experience at all. Write that down. Why isn't it your experience? What does belonging mean to you instead? When you disagree respectfully on the page, you clarify your own values. Conversation requires friction. Active bibliotherapy allows that friction safely. As a practice, here's what I often do. After finishing a chapter, I imagine the author sitting across from me, not as an authority, as a participant, and I write, you say this, I feel this. You believe this, I question this. It becomes intimate, personal, less academic, and more relational. This approach also reveals something subtle, the kind of voices you respond to most strongly. You might find that you argue more with certain authors or feel deeply aligned with others. That tells you something about your internal landscape. When I read Anita Desai, I often notice how interior has her characters are reflective, quiet, layered. That tone invites introspection in me. When I read someone more confrontational, I feel my defensiveness rise. Both reactions are useful. In conversation, you discover yourself. The page becomes a meeting ground between your inner life and the text. It also slows you down. Instead of finishing books quickly, you begin to dwell. You sit with one paragraph longer. You notice your physical reaction, tightening shoulders, softened breath, irritation, warmth. Then you write about that reaction, not about the author's intention, about your response. That's the therapeutic element, because ultimately books are mirrors with language. They reflect you differently depending on where you stand. When you journal in conversation, you avoid two extremes, blind admiration and detached criticism. You move into dialogue, and dialogue is where thinking deepens. There's also something grounding about realizing that great writers are not infallible voices hovering above you. Their minds shaped by context, culture, bias, experience. You're allowed to respond, allowed to change, allowed to extend their ideas into your own life. That shift builds intellectual confidence, quietly, without performance. And here's what I've noticed over time. The more I write in conversation with books, the more articulate I become in real conversations. Because I've practiced forming responses thoughtfully. I've practiced pausing before agreeing. I've practiced noticing disagreement without hostility. All of that begins on the page. So tonight, try this. Read a page slowly of your book. Close the book. Open your journal and start with Dear Author. Then respond. Tell the author what you felt, where you agreed, where you resisted. Let it be informal, curious, honest. You'll notice something shift. Reading will feel less lonely, less one directional, more alive. And over time, your journal will hold not just your thoughts, but a record of the intellectual company you've kept and how you've responded to it. That's not just reading, that's participation, one page at a time.